Alpha.
Look what I've got my hands on. This is the new Sony 2.8 GM lens. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I'm Bob Martin. I'm a sports photographer. For many years I've covered the major events in sports all across the world. This fills a hole for me. It sits between the 135-1.8 and the 400-2.8, a prime F2.8 300mm lens. I'm really looking forward to using this with my Sony Alpha cameras. First impressions. This is the lightest 300 2.8 I've ever come across. I think it's probably about the same weight as my first 70-200 lens. You know, that's pretty amazing. So this is going to be a lens for handheld photography. That's the most important thing that comes across here. The next thing I really like about it is the way the lens hood fits. It's a bayonet mount now as against the locking nut. So it goes on like that and locks. And equally, that not going to get knocked and come undone. You know, that's really important to me as a sports photographer. This will hang around my shoulder day in, day out. So everything must be tight on it. The balance of this lens is just right. You know, whether you're shooting horizontally or vertically. The lens sits in the palm of your hand. It's not top heavy, it's not back heavy. The balance is spot on for sports photography. This lens is going to be great for pan shots. You know, that's one of my favourite types of shot, a pan blur. And for many sports like motor racing, like cycling, for indoor sports like gymnastics and basketball. And going back to the panning that we were just talking about, I mean, when you're panning, a 300mm is a pretty optimal length lens. But if you're a little bit further away, this is great with a 1.4 converter and great with a doubler. Super lightweight for handheld photography. And you know what? It's also going to make my carry-on lighter. So if I've got to take my cameras on the plane, my bag's going to be lighter, and that's very important to me. I've used this now for a couple of weeks. I've done a couple of test shots. Used it a couple of times in Vengeance. It's pin sharp. Should be, shouldn't it really? It's a Sony GM after all. They're all marvellous lenses, but this is fantastic. And with the converters as well. It's super sharp with a 1.4 and super sharp with a doubler, a 2x converter. When shooting, difficult to capture moments, particularly if you're moving your camera a lot. You know, you're following something, you know, pretty difficult to capture. The AF seems spot on. It's locking on, and even when I'm moving the camera around quite a bit, the AF manages to stay on the subject. And then the eye focus, I mean, that's one of my favourite things about the Alpha 1 camera. I've been using it on the eye focus on the small setting, appears to be the best for this lens so far. I've only been using it a bit, and we'll get there, and I'm sure we'll refine it. But for the moment, I'm using the eye focus with the small setting. The autofocus lock buttons are as they should be, just like on the 400 and the 600. Whether you're shooting vertically or horizontally, they're in the right place. They've got the same relief around the button, so you can find the button even when you're wearing gloves, which is of course so important when we're doing sport. The manual focus ring is pretty direct and it's instantaneous, and it's a very smooth sweep, which is very important when you are manually focusing. I don't really, to be quite honest, manually focus much these days. AF is quite fantastic and much better than me in 99% of cases. So looking to the future, what do sports photographers want? I'll tell you what we want. We want innovation, okay? We want you to keep pushing the bar. You've already got more mirrorless native lenses. Every single Sony lens is designed for the mirrorless system. You already got the market leading camera in the Alpha 1, but let's have a bit more, you know. Perhaps a few more frames a second would be nice. You know, I didn't think I would use 20 frames a second when the Alpha 9 offered it. Then along came the Alpha 1 on with 30 frames a second. That's now my camera of choice. My standard setting is now 30 frames a second. So maybe a few more frames a second would be nice. That would be great. A bit of innovation on the lens scene would be nice. You know, perhaps a few more prime lenses. We love prime lenses, so we'd like some more primes. Some faster zooms, that perhaps will work for us. But more importantly, if Sony keep innovating and keep talking to us and listening to what we want, we're going to be happy, because that's the best thing about using Sony equipment.